I found the listening device on a Monday morning. I was moving a wall panel in my office, a routine check, something I did every few months, old habit from training. Most times I found nothing. This time, I found something. It was small, professional grade, the kind that records and transmits, not the cheap kind you order online, the real kind. The kind that requires access to serious equipment and the knowledge to use it properly. I held it in my fingers for a moment. Then I put it back exactly where I found it. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop. I looked like someone starting a normal Monday. I was not having a normal Monday. The first thing I did was run the serial number. I did not use my office computer. I used a personal device on a separate network. Quiet. No record. The result came back in 4 minutes. The device was logged in our unit's classified equipment inventory, signed out 8 weeks ago. The signature on the checkout form was marked as a routine maintenance request. Someone in my unit had signed out this device. Someone in my unit had put it in my office. I looked at the result for a long time. Then I closed the screen. I had a full unit meeting in 2 hours. I want to be clear about what I did not do. I did not call anyone. I did not report it. I did not go to my commanding officer. Not yet. Because the device came from inside the unit, that meant the unit was not fully safe. That meant any call I made through normal channels could reach the wrong person before it reached the right one. I had 2 hours. I used them. I went back to the wall panel. I photographed everything: the position, the wiring, the make and model. I documented it all on my personal device. Then I called Marcus Webb. He answered on the second ring. I told him in 3 sentences: device found, serial traced to my unit, meeting in 2 hours. He said, "Don't move it, don't mention it, come to me after the meeting." I said, "Understood." He said, "Claire, everything you say in that room in the next 2 hours, say it like someone is listening." I said, "Someone is."
The meeting was at 10:00. 12 people around the table, my unit, people I had worked with for 4 years, people I trusted, or had trusted. I looked at each face as they came in. I was looking for something, a tell, an avoidance, anything. I found nothing obvious. That meant one of 2 things. Either the person was good at hiding it, or there was more than one person. I ran the meeting normally, routine briefing, status updates, nothing classified, nothing that would give whoever was listening anything useful. I watched eyes, I watched hands, I watched who looked at me when I spoke and who looked away. At the end I said, "Good work this week," dismissed. Everyone filed out. Morrison stayed. He always stayed to help stack the chairs, 4 years, every meeting, without being asked. He said, "You okay, Captain? You seem off." I said, "Long weekend, I'm fine." He nodded. He stacked the chairs. He left. I sat in the empty room. I thought about Morrison. I drove to Webb's office at noon. I put everything on his desk: the photographs, the serial number result, the checkout form signature. He looked at it for a long time. He said, "The signature." I said, "Yes." He said, "You recognize it?" I said, "It's been modified. Someone changed it, but the base handwriting is still there if you know what to look for." He said, "Do you know what to look for?" I said, "I've been reading this unit's paperwork for 4 years." He said, "Who is it?" I said, "I need to be certain before I say the name." He said, "How long to be certain?" I said, 24 hours. He said, "What do you need?" I said, "Access to the full checkout log for the last 6 months and someone to watch my office tonight." He said, "Done." He said, "Claire, if you're right about the handwriting, I said, I know. He said, this person has been listening to you for 8 weeks. I said, I know, Webb. He was quiet. I said, I need to know why. The checkout log told me what I needed. 3 devices, all logged as maintenance, all signed out by the same hand, across 6 months. 3 devices, my office, possibly more locations. I sat with the log for an hour. I cross-referenced every entry against every date. I built a timeline. Then I had the name. Not a guess, a documented, traceable, evidenced name. I called Webb. I said 1 word. He was silent for 5 seconds. Then he said, "Are you certain?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why?" I said, "That's what I don't know yet." He said, "Do you want to find out before we move?" I thought about that. 8 weeks of my office being listened to. 8 weeks of conversations, briefings, phone calls, private moments. I said, "Yes, I want to know why." He said, "Then we set something up."
We set it up the next morning. The plan was simple. I went back to my office, I sat at my desk, I made a phone call, a real one, to a colleague about a routine matter. Anyone listening would hear a normal Tuesday morning. Then I opened a file on my desk, a real file, current work, nothing sensitive. I left the office for lunch, 30 minutes. When I came back, Webb's contact was waiting in the corridor. He said the device had been accessed remotely during my lunch break. Someone had checked the recording. He had traced the access point. It came from inside the building. It came from an office 2 doors down from mine. We went together, Webb, his contact, and me. We knocked. The door opened. Lieutenant Chen looked at us. 26 years old, 2 years in my unit, the person I had been mentoring. She looked at my face, then at Webb's. She understood immediately. She stepped back from the door. She said, "I can explain." I said, "I know you can. That's why we knocked instead of sending MPs." She sat down. Webb's contact secured the room. I sat across from her. I said, "Tell me why." She talked for 40 minutes. I am not going to give you every detail. Some of it is still part of an active investigation. Some of it belongs to people who are not in this story. What I can tell you is the shape of it. Chen had been approached 6 months ago. Someone outside the unit. Someone with access and leverage. They had given her a choice that was not really a choice. She had made the wrong decision. She had known it was wrong when she made it. She had been trying to find a way out for 3 months. She had not found one until we knocked on her door. When she finished talking, I was quiet. Then I said, "Why my office?" She said, "They wanted to know what you knew about a specific investigation." I said, "Did I know it?" She said, "Yes, you just didn't know you knew it." I said, "The maintenance report I filed in March?" She said, "Yes." I thought about a report I had filed in March, a routine flag on a data discrepancy, submitted through channels, acknowledged and filed away. Someone outside the unit had been worried about that report for 6 months, worried enough to recruit Chen, worried enough to bug my office, worried enough to watch me for 8 weeks. I said, "Chen." She said, "Yes." I said, "You came to my unit 2 years ago. I mentored you. I told you that the work requires honesty above everything." She said, "I know." I said, "Did you believe me when I said it?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Do you believe me now?" She said, very quietly, "More than before." I said, "Then tell Webb everything, all of it, right now. That's the only way through this." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Then she started talking again. The investigation ran for 3 months. I will not detail it. It is ongoing in some dimensions. What I will tell you is what I know. Chen cooperated fully. Her cooperation mattered. It changed the shape of what the investigation was able to establish.
Webb's assessment was that without her cooperation, the case would have taken significantly longer to build. Chen faced consequences. I will not describe them because they are hers to carry and not mine to share. What I will say is that the consequences were proportionate to the cooperation. That is how it should work. The people outside the unit who had approached her, who had given her the choice that was not a choice, are part of the active investigation. I cannot say more than that. My March report, the routine flag, the data discrepancy I had noticed and filed and forgotten about. It turned out to matter considerably. It mattered enough that someone had spent 6 months trying to find out what I knew about it. They found out I knew enough.
I think about Chen sometimes. 26 years old, 2 years in, someone I had been mentoring. She made a bad decision. She made it under pressure. She spent 3 months knowing it was wrong and not knowing how to get out of it. When we knocked on her door, she could have denied everything. She had options. She chose not to use them. I do not know if that makes the decision forgivable. That is not mine to determine. What I know is this. I told her the work requires honesty above everything. When it counted most, she chose honesty. Late, under pressure, after a significant mistake, but she chose it. That is something. I don't know exactly what, but it is something. She doesn't stay silent. She doesn't stay broken. She rises. Sometimes rising is putting a listening device back exactly where you found it, sitting at your desk, opening your laptop, looking like someone starting a normal Monday, while you figure out what comes next. Subscribe. New story every week. Same ending every time. She rises. Leave a comment. Has someone you trusted ever let you down? Tell me. I read every single one.